So welcome everybody to Accessibility Twin Cities Meetup. It is our March meetup where we are talking about beginning the accessibility journey. We are asking that you remain muted with your camera off during the panel discussion. You can always ask me any questions that you have by putting your questions in the chat box in Zoom. We do have closed captioning tonight. We're welcoming Amber from Caption Access. We do have a backup link provided in the chat box if you're having any issues with the captions. And tonight's meetup is recorded. You will be able to find tonight's meetup and previous recordings at our Twin Cities Meetup recording page. I have that link in the chat box for you. Get a couple more people admitted here. So our moderator tonight is Lynn Wehrman. She is the president and founder of WECO Accessibility Services. I'm sure many of you know her through the meetups. So welcome, Lynn. We would like to thank our sponsors, United Health Group. And Lynn, I will let you take it away with welcomes and announcements.
Thanks, Kelly. We want to welcome everybody to Accessibility Twin Cities Meetup, which we have kind of named Accessibility TC Meetup because we have a growing number of members from across the globe. Since we went purely virtual with last year, with everyone going online due to the global pandemic, wanted to let you know that we are going to continue virtual membership because it has worked so well. So that is going to be continued indefinitely with the opportunity for people in the Twin Cities to attend some on-site events throughout the year. But the primary membership, we meet every other month, starting in January on the last Monday of each month. And that is going to remain virtual so that we can make it easy for everyone to be a part of this. Also, the membership is actually free. We do have a $5 joining fee, but all you need to do is sign up for the free trial and we will waive the $5. The Meetup website is not the savviest website, and we got lots and lots of spam and bots signing up. So the little $5 is how we weed out people that aren't real people signing up as members, and it enables us to keep a more accurate count of who is actually active in the group. So please share this out with your friends because it's designed to be a free resource that is a part of the mission that our company has to provide accessibility information to the public. And it is also something that is near and dear to the heart of United Health Group, our co-sponsor. So what we would like to let you know is that we do have a few spots remaining for the last few meetups of the year. So what do you want to hear about? Is there something you'd like to speak about? Or is there someone you would like to have us pursue as a speaker? You can certainly reach out to us through our Meetup website or through Kelly's contact and let us know if there's anything you would like us to present on. We just released some of the topics through the summer, but we really like to know what it is that you'd like to hear. We also want to go over how you locate the Meetup resources because the Meetup website page can be kind of challenging to find your way around. So Kelly, could you advance to the next slide? I've got a visual representation here. So what I have is screenshots of how you find the resources on the Meetup site, which I will verbally describe. So when you get to the web page, you go to the main page, locate the events tab. And if you're using a screen reader or similar software, it should pick up as a heading or a tab. It is beneath the primary image on the page. It is the second from the left after Abouts. And then you will be taken to the events page and you will have a choice of upcoming or past. You want to click on past. And then if you want to see any discussion or any links that people have shared out through the discussion tonight, you can scroll down through the discussion feed. We always put a link directly to the webpage on the WECO website where we store the recordings as well. Just wanted to clear that up because sometimes people have a hard time locating those. And if you have any questions at all, Kelly is one of the co-coordinators and she's happy to help you locate those resources. Next slide. So tonight we are going to be beginning the accessibility journey. And this is something that we've actually had some requests for. There are a lot of people that are wondering, how do you get this going in your organization? I feel like I'm the only one that is interested in this. Or your organization may be facing some legal challenges around accessibility and everyone isn't sure where to turn. So tonight we wanted to put together a panel for you of people who have been there and people who have had all of those same questions and found a way forward. So we'll be introducing our panel in a moment, but we're going to be covering this basically in 4 different sections, although I will admit that we may drift back and forth between them. Igniting the spark of accessibility, getting that idea going. For many organizations, it sometimes is one person or one working group that gets it going. How you engage others in the accessibility journey or the desire to get that going, how you locate resources, and then we are going to ask our panelists what they think of a top-down approach or a grassroots approach, because this is usually the dilemma most organizations are facing. Do we have to have management buy-in, or can we start a ripple that creates a wave from the grassroots? And we'll be ending with some advice from our panelists to get you going. Okay, next slide. So we will be introducing our panelists next. Next slide. And we're very, very happy to have a wonderful group from Hennepin County Digital Services here with us tonight. And they are actually people that we've worked with on some projects, and we've really admired their approach. A very planful approach. The Hennepin County has always been very open to discovery and ideas. A long time ago, I worked with Hennepin County on commuter transportation, and I found them to be very much of the same spirit of always being open to suggestions and wanting to do things that are better for their employees and better for the public they serve. So tonight we have with us Megan Seeds, who is the Chief Digital Officer, Lisa Yang, who is UX and Web Content Specialist, and Travis Valerius, who's a UX developer. And what I'm going to ask of each of you to do is, starting with Megan, is that I'm wondering if you would say a little bit about the work you do in relation to accessibility. And also, I'm asking you to audio describe yourself and provide your pronouns. I need to track back and do me. So my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am actually a very petite blonde woman, white, wearing glasses, and I'm wearing a purple shirt and big red beads. And I'm sitting in my vintage mid-century modern dining room right now. So, Megan?
Thanks, Lynn. As Lynn said, I'm Megan Seeds. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am kind of average height, build in most of ways, brown hair, shoulder length, and I'm wearing a blue and white striped shirt with a colorful scarf, one of my favorite scarves, in fact. And sitting in my upstairs sunroom, which has been the most multi-purpose of our rooms in this pandemic, but it's my favorite room because it has windows on 3 sides, and so I always know what's happening outside, even if I can't be out there to enjoy it. And in my role as Chief Digital Officer, I also manage the digital service team. So I'm playing a role to both ensure that the digital service team is supported and resourced and coordinated on our priority work, and also working with colleagues in IT and elsewhere in our home communication and engagement service department to kind of speak to how the county work presents itself externally. Most particularly to our group, we're focused on the external web presence, which includes Hennepin US, the county's primary website, but also about 24 other external facing sites that are hosted all on the same infrastructure. I have a great team. 2 of the members are here today, and really glad to be able to talk about how we are continuing to learn about accessibility and trying to fold it more and more into the work we do as a way to champion it throughout the organization.
Thanks. Lisa.
Hi everyone. My name is Lisa Yang. My pronouns that I identify with are she, her, hers, and I'm Asian, specifically Hmong. I have black hair. It seems long now, and I'm wearing a dark blue. I'm wearing dark blue shirts, and I have contacts on, by the way, so I am nearsighted. At the county, I am a UX specialist and focusing on accessibility as well, and still trying to do what I can to move accessibility efforts at the county from our team. And I'm just happy to be here.
Well, and I should add that Lisa and I know each other because we both used to work at MnDOT.
Yes.
When I was starting to figure out a lot of accessibility work and I was doing web work, and I would mess up the website and Lisa would come down to 3rd floor and rescue me. And I used to call Lisa and Kay Korsgaard my fairy web mothers. So it's really fun to have Lisa with us again. Travis.
Hi everyone, I'm Travis Valerius. I'm a white male, pronouns are he, him, his. I have dark hair, medium length, a little bit of gray sprinkled in there. I'm not sure if it's coming through on camera. Slight beard or scruff, I would call it. 6'1", kind of an average build. Sitting in my basement with some plain walls behind me, a few doors. The county, I'm a UX developer, which essentially just means a front-end developer with a focus on accessibility and user experience.
Great. Okay, next slide. And then also on our panel, we're pleased to have Debbie Heilig. Debbie is will be introducing herself, but it should note that she is currently on staff at WECO, but she was once one of our customers. So Debbie.
Thanks, Lynn. So I'm Debbie Heilig. The pronouns I use are she, her, hers. I look different in person than I do in my picture because my hairstyle changes a lot. I currently have shoulder length brown hair. I'm wearing glasses, pretty average white woman, 5'8", and I am sitting in my office that has picture of a really soothing waterfall kind of river behind me and a bookshelf that has been recently organized based on the home edit version, and so my books are all color coordinated. So I used to work, I was a excuse me, I was a product owner at Deluxe Corporation, and that's where I met Lynn, and that was in 2014. And I have been the director of client relations at WECO. I've been with WECO for next week, it'll be a year.
Great. All right. Well, let's get started. Next slide, Kelly. So we're going to start out first by talking about what ignited that spark. And I think that, you know, for many of us, I think it's changing now as accessibility is becoming more in the forefront. More organizations are aware social impact of inaccessibility, as well as the legal impact of inaccessibility. But I'm going to start out with Megan. If you could talk a little bit about, or Megan, who on your team can best speak to how this got started? Who started it? Where did it come from at Hennepin County?
Sure. I can start providing a little context, but I know Lisa and Travis both will have versions of their own sparks to add here. I think at the county, I first began working closely with what was then the web team back in 2014. And at that point, the county had just published out a whole new site, and along with that came updated web standards. And so when I joined the team, there already were standards that spoke to WCAG guidelines. I think would have been 2.0 at the time. And there was already understanding that we were to ensure our sites were accessible. But as our team developed and we really wanted to focus especially on usability, it was clear that we needed certainly to have a better understanding of accessibility in order to say we were wholly focused on usability. And as a local government organization, I think our team all is very much in agreement that ensuring what we produce is accessible, because we truly serve everyone in the county, and that this is a huge portion of our resident population and our business partner population. And so, I mean, because of that, I think we feel really strongly that we have to be getting ahead of our ability to deliver accessible service and not even just try to keep pace. I think sort of generally that was there, and certainly there, several years ago now, there was a handful of lawsuits filed in the West Metro that got the attention of other leaders in our organization. I think questions started coming to us as those were more widely people were more aware of them, and that did play a role in helping frame conversations and build awareness, because people pay attention to lawsuits. So it's been helpful to kind of have that convergence both from the bottom and the top to advocate for the topic.
And it's really, really refreshing to hear an organization tying usability into accessibility without us having to tell them. So it's a lot of what we do at WECO. But having that realization, having that really good, strong UX platform is just wonderful to hear about. I need to jump back and explain that the slides that we are showing for each topic have a visual. This one is a person seated in a wheelchair as if he is explaining a process to a group with a whiteboard in the background. So who's next, Hennepin County, that you can build on that?
Lisa, do you want to share your work and your role in our key partnership?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when I first came to the county, well, like Lynn said, I was at the Minnesota Department of Transportation for quite a bit. And I think around 2010 or around there was when accessibility was being talked about a lot in the web team at that agency at the state level. And so when I came to the county in 2014, I was pretty aware of accessibility, but still had a lot to learn. And, I think our team, focused on the documents that were on our website, because there are about 5,000, I believe, documents on the website. And there was a lot to go through and figure out how to navigate through that, because it wasn't sustainable just to continue to fix documents, since those documents would always get updated. So there are just things like that we were trying to think through. But I think from there, I mean, I was noticing, that there was a lot of, there was a big need to kind of educate and teach people about accessibility from the very basic, why it matters, and, what, who it helps. And it's not just for, those who are living with disabilities, but that anything we do to help with accessibility, make something accessible, helps everyone. And so spreading that message countywide has been a big effort. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Lisa. Travis?
Yeah, so for me, well, the spark was already started at Hennepin County by the time I had joined. I just started here in August of 2020, so still relatively new at the county. So that spark was more of a flame at that point. But for me personally, I had my own, personal spark once. I had my own, firsthand experience with, I had people come into my personal life. And I just seen the everyday struggles, or more so the flaws in our society and the exclusivity of things and places. It was just really heartbreaking, and it's to a degree, sometimes it kind of makes you angry to see the way things play out. And so the web is a place where I work. It's kind of my domain, and I saw it as a avenue, a place that I can make a difference. And so that was the spark for me, for sure. Is just that firsthand experience of seeing how people can struggle when we exclude them, and it's just not right. So I wanted to look for a job that cared about those things, and that's when I came across the county, and it's been really awesome ever since. I'm learning a lot still, and we have an awesome team here. So
that's great to hear, Travis. And I think that is something that I found with people who begin accessibility efforts in a lot of organizations, is that very oftentimes they have a personal tie to accessibility, whether it's themselves or it's someone that they know, or they become aware of the impacts of inaccessibility and accessibility, and they find a mission. I remember speaking at a meetup that was held, I think it was held at Creed Interactive in downtown St. Paul several years ago, and explaining the fundamentals of how inaccessibility and accessibility worked on a website. And a developer ran up to me and said, I've got a whole new reason to get up in the morning. I could create accessibility for so many people. So it's really, really exciting to hear people. And I think that's so often, the case is when people get it.
VERSES.
Yeah, but it just says V.
There we go. Just needed to mute. But I think that so oftentimes that it starts with a connection that somebody makes personally. So Debbie, can you share your spark moment? Because I certainly remember that.
Yeah. So I am embarrassed to say that I haven't had anyone in my life who's had a disability, had any issues accessing things digitally. And my compliance director had been at some networking event and came back and said, and I owned the check ordering website. So the personal checks that you used to write out for everything at the grocery store, and now people don't use many of them anymore. So I owned the check ordering website. And the compliance director came back and said, I just heard this woman, and you need to talk to her. You need to talk to Lynn and find out what we need to do with your website. And the only thing that I had been doing is I knew that our demographics, our users were older because they were still writing checks. And so the only thing I had been doing is when my marketing communications department would come with really small print or small images, I'd say, make it bigger. I don't think they're going to see it, because I was already in my mid 40s and had bifocals. So I knew I was doing things without knowing it was accessibility. And then I talked to Lynn. I can't remember, we probably met for coffee, and the light bulb just went off. I started working with my team right away, researching it, and we'll get into the rest later, but it was just a networking connection with Lynn.
And I confess that I was not after Debbie's business. I was after the small business group. But I got routed to Debbie, and we got the best cheerleader for accessibility that we could. So it was really, really exciting when that connection happened. Okay, can we go on to the next slide then, Kelly? Thank you. So engaging others. And I think that it's going to be, actually, I'm glad we've got the different representations from the different organizations, because I think it's really going to be different for each one. I think that Lisa touched a little bit on the importance of educating others at the county about this, and who was being impacted. So if the Hennepin County crew can talk a little bit more about that, how did you get other people involved? Was this a big effort?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, sure. I mean, it is a big effort overall. I think a lot of times, not just at Hennepin County, but in most places, I'm hearing that it's up to one person or one team to really push accessibility forward, or that the organization is looking to that one person or that one team as the resource for accessibility. And so our challenge as and an opportunity is to, work with internal partners and create, kind of groups and meetups for us to work on accessibility together, so that we're not only talking about accessibility, but teaching each other and learning from one another. So it is a big effort, but so far it's worked really well. I think some of the approaches that we've taken before were like maybe more like very detailed work, like how do we make this document accessible, or how do we make sure this web page is accessible. And we're finding more and more that that not only just takes training, but people feel like they need permission to do that work and take the time to do it. And so we're I guess you could say, like, not only trying to spread the message, but then also trying to make sure that there's countywide support in that work. Megan, Travis, like, feel free to chime in if there's anything that I'm missing too.
It's certainly an effort I think we're engaged in on many fronts, because there's both what we on our team sort of own and can control and influence and directly ensure is accessible, let's say, but even on our main county website, we talk about that website as a product, and that it's not just made up of the content that our team is managing, but there's also applications the county owns and develops. There's third-party applications we're buying, but they're all sort of presented to the user through the same kind of interface, more or less. And so we spent a lot of time trying to, again, control what we can control, but also bring to the table colleagues who have ownership over those pieces that are part of the broader product. So there's kind of the softer ways to engage staff, to like invite them into a conversation. At the same time, we're revising standards and trying to make clear what the line that we all need to clear is related to standards. And then a conversation that we're still needing to address more broadly across our organizations. Given the standard, how then do we ensure staff are equipped with the skills needed to meet that standard in their own work? Because as Lisa said, like, ensuring that anything we produce is accessible could not be a one-person job, and there's a part of almost everyone's work that can be done in a way that aids accessibility, from the beginning, rather than looking at it like a mitigation exercise, at the end. There's a lot of work for us to continue doing just on managing the conversation and ensuring that, whether it's leadership or practitioners or supervisors and managers, that they all understand what the goal is and the role they play in helping meet that goal.
I'm going to throw in an additional question here, because I went through the ADA transition plan process at MnDOT, and I did the communication pieces, which is how I launched a career in digital accessibility. But one thing that I noticed from that project was that the organization made the commitment to upgrading all of the state's infrastructure, and this is physical infrastructure like curb ramps. And the ADA coordinator that I worked with, Christy Billier, was put in charge of inventorying the entire state and scheduling projects to make sure that it was all upgraded. But there was pushback. There was pushback from engineers who were trying to control costs for projects. And I remember on more than one occasion, Christy telling them, I did not create the ADA. You know, having to explain to them that this is by law, we have to do this, you know, don't shoot the messenger. Is there any degree of that that you're dealing with?
Short answer is yes, I think, right, Lisa?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even now we get questions like, who says we have to do this? You know, who's responsible for making sure something is accessible? Questions like that. And I mean, sometimes I think a lot of times we try and turn the conversation to like it's a legal thing. Like, you know, there are standards that, you know, are worldwide, like, you know, that people are following worldwide, like WCAG, and that there's federal laws and state laws that we need to follow, but also that it's not just about the law, but that it's the right thing to do for people. And since they don't have, at least, you know, for government, people don't have another alternative. You know, if we say you need to get your driver's license renewed, they can't go do that somewhere else. And they have to use the tools that we're putting forth. And so how do we ensure that we're not creating barriers to people getting what they need done? And that, you know, however, whatever tools we're using, that it's inclusive of everyone can access that and use it and be able to, you know, quickly get through that transaction. But yeah, we do get those, and we try to turn the conversation. It may or may not work, but still, I feel like that's the right way to think about accessibility.
I just always felt that there was, you know, that in order to move ahead any kind of an effort like this, there has to be a recognition that some of the people working on these projects have been caught off guard and they don't understand that it's necessary. And so that's always a skill to try to get people with you and get that up to speed. Is there anything unique or interesting that the three of you have done to try to achieve that at the county?
I wonder if Travis could talk about the user experience community of practice, and well, Lisa and Travis can both speak to that, but how that has convened and what that conversation consists of.
Yeah, like, are you talking about our group that meets every other Friday, Megan?
Yep.
Yeah, we have a group of people that get together from all different departments, and we talk about, you know, user experience, accessibility. We have some things that actually come out of the meetings. One of the things we're working on is a pattern and component library to kind of standardize the way we do things at the county on the web. And a big part of that is accessibility, making sure we have web standards in place and to make sure we're all kind of speaking the same language and you know, making that any new thing we're creating is as accessible as possible.
Great. Well, I want to stop and apologize that I think my apartment is a wind tunnel right now. So if there's a lot of noise, I'm trying to mute. There is a huge amount of wind outside right now, and it's kind of rushing through. So, but I'd like to step over to Debbie now. And I know that Debbie was kind of the Lone Ranger for accessibility for a long time in her company. So Debbie, can you tell us what you did to engage others?
So I think the first thing was I was able to find some dollars and have WECO come in and give some training to my team. So I had my web developer, my project manager, my business analyst, my UAT guy, my ex-UAT lady, and I did invite a few people from other business units thinking that they should know this as well. But it really helped. It was everything that Lynn, when we met, had told me about how how building your websites accessibly opens up the world to people with disabilities that I just hadn't been aware of. And so bringing her in and the team, teaching my team why it was important, and then actually going into how to code for it. And that stuff goes over my head. I'm glad that I had a team to do that. But it was really the training. And what was really neat about it is one of our leads for testing, he had a daughter with disabilities. And I think during the training, he said, that's why my daughter loves her Kindle so much, because it was a lot easier and cleaner. And so stuff was even clicking differently for him. So I think the training was the really big thing, just becoming aware of why and then how.
Yeah, we often say that to people that ask us, how do we get this going, is that when people understand the why, the how becomes so much easier. And so we do a lot of awareness training at WeCo, because a lot of people come to us just, with no clue how to convince people. Okay, well, let's move on to the next slide. And this one says locating resources. It shows a close-up of a conference table with notebooks, laptop, and people assembled around the table. So this is always kind of the big question, because everybody, when they figure out that they need to do it, want to do it, it's how do you find the resources? So Megan, will lead off with you.
Sure, and I'll start by referencing another part of the engagement conversation, and our way to find resources is trying to relate back to the physical accommodations. I mean, a place like the county, they own and rent lots of buildings, and there is a strong familiarity with ensuring that our physical space is accessible. People understand what that means. So a lot of our framing has been to try to, connect that dot, that we have to provide the same level of service in our digital spaces too. And certainly, thanks, quote unquote, thanks to the pandemic, we provide a lot more digital service than we did, in February of 2020, let's say. So that has been helpful in helping people understand the context of the why. In terms of locating resource, the kinds of learning resources, we're so glad to have other organizations further ahead, because their stories are really valuable. The state and Jay Wyant in particular is such a font of knowledge that just learning from him and his office and what they make available online. I think the U of M is another group that has great resources available. That's been helpful just to know where to point to as we're learning ourselves. Certainly having a valuable in-town partner like WeCo is great. And one of the first type of engagement we did with WeCo was to get an audit done of our website in a way that we could have our kind of talking points laid out for us, like what is our situation, what do we, kind of how dire is what we're dealing with, and then have a way to frame up and prioritize the work we needed to do in the way that would make the biggest difference for our users across our website. Just looking through a few other notes here. So kind of in terms of understanding generally, accessing a few steps on the how-to side, that's been really helpful. And a third thing I would note too, that those of us on the team and even other colleagues have certainly benefited tremendously from going to events like World Usability Day and seeing a room full of users of assistive technology using their devices, and just to have that firsthand experience in watching people try to use your own product even. It's very humbling and certainly very motivating to see the kinds of barriers we are regularly, even if unintentionally, throwing in front of people who need to access government service.
Well, and thank you for that testimony for our company's mission. We do a lot of free demonstration work because we think it's so important for people to understand you can't simulate someone else's disability. And when you see somebody using your website with a screen reader or speech recognition software and getting hung up on something, it really does bring it home. So anything else, Lisa and Travis, that you'd like to add about locating resources?
I'll just add that we live in a time now where we have what feels like unlimited amount of knowledge out there at the at our fingertips. There's a plethora of good resources out there to just, if you want to be a self-starter and just go learn things about accessibility. That's what I feel like I kind of had to do. I didn't receive anything in any of my formal web development education. Never once talked about accessibility, which is that was about 10 years ago. So that feels pretty recent. It feels like it should be part of the curriculum, and I'm sure it is now for a lot of people. But I had to just go out there and just find my own resources. YouTube has a lot of good stuff. WebAIM, Wico has a resource tab. There's a lot of stuff out there you can find for free. As long as it's like a passion of yours, you'll find a lot of good stuff. And join groups and go to things like this, and just kind of have that thirst for knowledge, I guess, and you'll find plenty of stuff out there.
That's such a good point. And, even our company, where we are, subject matter experts, we have found a lot of great help and assistance with WebAIM. They're kind of like rock stars to us, as are the W3C. They're all our geeky rock stars. Charles Hall's on the call tonight. Hi, Charles. But even, we live accessibility every day, and we will reach out to numerous times WebAIM and just say, hey, are we reading this thing right? And that's one thing that I really love about digital accessibility, is that it's a small community, but there are a lot of people willing to help you, even if they are for profit. So it is really something that you can begin to educate yourself with very little resources. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to offer?
No, I mean, I think Megan and Travis covered it pretty well. I guess maybe the only thing I would add is that I don't know how many times a day I Google for accessibility related stuff when questions come up, or when it just seems like it's a very big topic and it's hard to remember everything. And it touches so many things. There's development, design, content, usability, so user experience, and so yeah.
Yeah, and it changes all the time. We have an accessibility specialist that is dedicated just to keeping up on research for our team and changing things with technology. And it is, and there's a lot of information out there. So Debbie, resources, how did that work for you? And this can be anything from, how did you find the money to, ways that you punted.
Well, luckily, I had money in my budget for the training and for the audit, so that was all good. I did not have money in the budget for making fixes. And okay, so this is, back in 2013, 2014, so things have changed, but our website, the homepage was public, but you had to log in. And so it didn't feel like it was as high need as some of the other sites. And none of our clients or customers had come to us with any issues with the website not being accessible. And so since it wasn't considered priority, I couldn't get additional funding. But because I had my team as part of the training, they understood. And so once we had the audit, we had prioritized everything based on what part of the website the fixes need to be taken place in. And I think it took about 2 years, but every time we had a release, the team would say, okay, Debbie, you've got these 7 things. We're going to be in this part of the website. Let's work on fixing this. And so it just took time, and we just kept plugging away at it. A big thing was the content management, how to get the alt tags into all the images that we had, and we updated images monthly. And so that was kind of a big deal, and marketing worked with me on that. And so it really was just working with the team, and everybody understood what we were striving towards and knew that we didn't have to be perfect, that any change was better than no change. So that's how we did it.
Thanks, Debbie. So we're going to try to get through all of our questions here and leave some time so that folks can ask. Next slide, Kelly. Okay, so this one says top down or grassroots tips for beginning. It shows a person seated in a wheelchair extending her hand and shaking the hand of somebody approaching her. So this is always the question that I like to ask, because there are, you can have very large organizations that are not engaged in an effort at all, but there can be somebody at the bottom of the food chain that decides it's important and create this ripple that's a wave. Or you can have super effective management buy-in, and then sometimes have difficult getting people below management to get going. So this is the lightning round question. Did your organization do top-down or grassroots? And how effective was that in getting your organizations moving forward on accessibility? Should we begin with you, Megan?
It sort of feels like a trick question. So the three of us might answer this in different ways, but maybe I'll offer, I think the majority of effort has been grassroots within our team, and also other teams. I know Stephanie Rosso is on the line here, works closely with us as well as our library web team. And so there's a lot of interest at the practitioner level, but it will only go so far if there isn't also top-down buy-in to continue to resource it and support it and carry the message of the value more broadly. So that's not a lightning round answer, but
that's okay. That's all right. And I think that the purpose of most grassroots is to try to get the notice of management, because I know that we did some of that at MnDOT with wellness. we got the commissioner's office to buy into a wellness fair from grassroots, and it was highly effective. And I believe the wellness fair still occurs, so sometimes it can be effective. Lisa, Travis, anything you'd like to share about that?
Sure. I mean, we've done both at the county. I mean, we mainly, like Megan said, have been focusing on more grassroots efforts, trying to get people more engaged. And it's kind of tough for a big organization like Hennepin County with 4,000 plus employees, I believe, and people touching different kinds of tools and publishing all sorts of different tools out. In the past, I guess you could say few months, we've taken kind of the top-down approach where with WeCo's help, we are coming up with drafting an accessibility policy, digital accessibility policy, trying to get to a web statement that we could put on our site eventually, and hopefully having that support from the top will help others internally to feel like they can have the resources that they need to learn more about accessibility, and also collaborate and connect together to create more accessible tools and products. So both, I think, are helpful. It's just the approaches are just different.
Travis, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just kind of like Lisa said, they're just different. They each have their pros and cons. I can speak to my personal experience at my last job. It was really hard to get management on board and to get on the same level of passion I had for it. And it became more of a tool that like a sales tool that would pitch to our clients of we can make things accessible and stuff, but it was mostly just sales fluff, and it wasn't really put into practice because it wasn't enforced by management to actually make things accessible. And so you really need to get everyone on board, and it's what we were saying earlier. It's not just one person's job. It's really got to be a culture shift, and everybody has to be on the same plan.
Great. Debbie, what can you share from your experience in private?
Well, I was lucky that it was actually my compliance director who introduced me to Lynn. And so I did have not top down, but middle down support. And then me and my team were working on that. It did help that once we were almost all the way fixed, one of our largest clients came to us and their hair was on fire. They were told that they needed all of their third-party vendors, their websites had to be accessible. And they finally reached me and I said, well, we're not there, but we're almost there. We've been working on it for 2 years. Here's the things we've done, and here's the releases that we have coming up and what we have yet to fix. And she was very, very happy. She said we were the first of her vendors who, one, knew what the ADA was, and I'm doing air quotes because that's what we called it in 2014. We knew what the ADA was, and we had been working towards making it better. So once your large client comes to you and says this has to be there, we knew that other clients were going to be following. So then we had a lot more leadership support after that as well.
That's really, really a great story. And I have heard that more than once from some of the clients we've worked with that they were able to come in and save the day because they had done the research on their own, or they had taken advantage of like our free assessment. And so they had kind of a baseline going in, and that really does create, a powerful narrative for getting more people engaged.
Yeah, she was actually shocked that we hadn't had a single complaint from a customer or a client about our website, that we were doing it just because it was the right thing to do.
That's cool. Excellent. Well, with that, I think we can open up the floor for questions because we've got about 8 minutes left. Kelly, do we have anything in the chat?
We don't have any questions. We do have a comment reiterating that everyone is responsible for accessibility practices, but no questions yet.
Okay. Well, if you would like to ask a question of the panel, we ask that you can certainly turn on your camera, unmute yourself. Don't have to turn on the camera. And if you could just give us your name and ask your question. If you want to direct it at a particular person, just say their name. I'm going to allow folks to formulate their questions. And while we will go back to that, there is one burning question that I want to ask of the entire panel. And that is, if you had to start all over again, an accessibility effort, what is the first thing or the one most important thing that you would do? So let's say you're starting over, you're moving into a new organization, and you are entrusted to get this accessibility effort going. What would be the thing that you would do? Go back to Megan. I'll do them in order.
We'll just say this is going to be in the top 3 things. I'm not positive it'd be the exact first conversation, but especially in government, it's very reasonable for us to continue to circle back to the resident. When we had badges on in our building every day, our badges say, we're here to serve residents. And so asking our colleagues, given that that's our task, where are we missing? What are the innate biases we all hold that are holding us back? And how can we, one, acknowledge them, learn about them, and focus our work in a way that from the beginning targets the needs of all of our users, whether it's the copy we're creating, the code that's being developed, the design that's being pulled together, how can that just be targeted and centered in the work from the beginning?
Lisa?
Yeah, I'm just forming words before I speak. there's this topic of translation that has come up, and when I think of what Megan is saying about, you know, like basically being inclusive, I'm always think back to my personal experiences growing up, being bilingual and speaking Hmong. Although I really am not good at speaking Hmong anymore, but the immigrant experience that my relatives have had and not being able to speak English and may also have some sort of, may not always trust government as well, based on their experiences with previous governments that they've lived through. And so just remembering back when I had to always either translate for relatives, or relatives would come to my father about anything. If they got a letter from the county, from the city, they would constantly say, I don't know what to do with this. I have to find someone who can speak English and read English. And my father would always be that one for most people, but seeing like how stressed they were, and the kind of anguish that they were going through because they were just unsure, they were worried, and they didn't understand a lot of the government like the government language on their letters that they were receiving. And so seeing that like really helped me just kind of be more thoughtful about, you know, what people are going through, whether, you know, they're limited in English speaking, or other kinds of inclusive accessibility barriers that we're putting up. And so I'm always thinking through like, what are some possible biases or any biases that we have when we're designing and writing and creating for the public.
And I think empathy is absolutely crucial,
Yeah,
to an effective accessibility efforts. I think that's a really, really good point. Travis?
Yeah, I think I agreed with some of the stuff Megan was saying. You know, making things accessible from the beginning. So getting everyone on board at the start. That starts in the planning process of any project you're working on. Accessibility should never be an afterthought. It's a lot easier if you incorporate accessibility from the start of a project rather than retrofitting a Band-Aid fix later on. You know, there's a common myth that accessibility is difficult, and it can be if you make it difficult on yourself. But if you start it from the planning process at the beginning and have everyone on board and thinking about it from, you know, design to development, content writing, all that stuff. If you plan around accessibility from the beginning, it's going to make it a lot easier on you, and a lot easier to maintain in the future too.
And there are statistics on how much cheaper it is if you do it in the beginning rather than the end. Debbie?
I have nothing to add. Travis said everything that I was going to say, and probably better than I would have said it.
Great.
Oh, and we do have a question from Charles Hall to everyone. How do you identify and dispel misinformation found on the web?
I think with any topic, just credibility of your source. You know, so if it's, you know, I mentioned YouTube earlier as a learning resource, and there's probably a lot of misinformation on YouTube, right? So anyone can do it. But if you know the channel, or you know, like a channel I watched, or a mini series I watched called Alleycast, A11Y cast, and it was from Google, right? So I can trust Google. You can trust, you know, WeK, and you know, just know who your sources are and where the information is coming from. I think is key.
I think one of the things that we struggle with, and I mean, I remember when I worked for state of Minnesota, I actually coordinated a wellness website, and I used to get very interesting emails from people telling me I should put this stuff up on the website. Is stuff that I used to refer to as tinfoil hat stuff. And I used to say, it needs to come from the CDC, the Mayo Clinic, or it's not going up there. But I wonder, you know, we're in an era where people don't agree on what is credible anymore. And I'm wondering, this is maybe slightly off the topic of accessibility, but how does the county tackle that?
And should we think about this in terms of misinformation about accessibility or misinformation in general?
I'm not sure. Charles, do you want to, you gave us the question.
About accessibility.
Oh, about accessibility. Okay. And Charles was actually our guest speaker a couple of meetups ago. There are on accessibility overlays, being able to fix things, and that's really dominating the search engine space right now. Is that it only costs you $49 to fix your website. So do you have people coming back to you saying, we don't need to really do this work, we can just buy an overlay?
I would say, fortunately, from even a leadership perspective, I'm not hearing that ask, like, can't you just go buy this? I think there is support for the kind of partnership we have here, and the fact that it's also not just the sort of technology itself. We're really trying to emphasize, the full spectrum of kinds of disabilities, and the words we choose to use to describe our service can help or hinder, the experience. And I haven't yet seen an app that can rewrite language clearly and plainly in a way that meets our brand standards. So I think there has been appreciation for the sort of human effort that has to be put forward through learning and skill and direct effort in our organization. But that's not to say I don't screen out a lot of sales calls myself.
Yeah, and I know that we are constantly vetting tools. One that was very interesting a few years ago was that there was a lot of people don't even know this, but there was a software that would turn words into an avatar doing ASL. And we're really fortunate, one of our board members' partners is an ASL expert. He works in the industry, and I sent it over to him and he was like, oh God, no. And you have to be really careful, because there are a lot of organizations out there hopping on the accessibility bandwagon to make a buck. And they don't necessarily represent, they're not really interested in filling the needs of a real user living with a disability. They simply want to sell you something. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Charles, while we've got you on the call?
No, I guess it might be worth reframing the question a little bit for people who are getting started.
Okay.
This questions make me think of usability testing. A lot of times, even if we're following best practices and putting forth recommendations that help people, those might not always be like the popular choices that our business partners make. And so hearing from and seeing people who use screen readers or other assistive tech really helps to kind of, show people like what that experience is like. And then we've been tying in like situational like disability as well, when people are unable to answer the phone, or unable to do a task because they have like limited temporary mobility, or they are just in a crowded place and they can't hear what's on their phone. Examples like that, like I think people can relate to.
All right, well, we are a little bit over time, but this has been an excellent panel. So I'm going to wrap up the meetup, and I'd like to first of all thank Hennepin County Digital Services, Megan Seeds, Lisa Yang, Travis Valerius. I'd also like to thank Debbie Heilig, our Director of Client Relations, who very willingly gave of her knowledge as well. This is really a wealth of knowledge we've had here. So thank you so much to each of you for spending the late afternoon with us. Next slide, Kelly. So next time we meet will be June 7th, because the meetup in May falls squarely on the Memorial Weekend. So we will be doing part 2, launching the accessibility journey, how to create your plan, budgeting and locating dollars, selecting services, and getting out the door. We have not yet assembled our panel, but we would be happy to have any of these individuals back for round 2. So I'll just put that out there. Next slide, Kelly. And then July 26th will be our summer meetup. And this is one that is kind of near and dear to my heart. Accessibility and inclusion and understanding cognitive disabilities. It is astounding to me that we still hear people say things like, we don't really need to worry about cognitive users because that's not a disability that impacts computer use, and it absolutely does. So I'm going to be leading that discussion, and we're going to be filling that out with a full panel because I grew up with 2 cognitive disabilities in a family where I and all my sisters were born with epilepsy, and there were generations of cognitive disabilities on my mother's side of the family. So really understand that impact. Try to get the discussion off of if it can't be corrected with a tool like a screen reader, then I don't need to develop for it, and discussing how usability really is positively impacted when you consider the needs of users with cognitive disabilities. Next slide. And just a reminder that you can access all of the recordings. I will confess that I went to the website and looked at them, and they are not in order. I will have one of our staff take a look at them and get them in better order so you can sort through them easier, but they are all up there on the webpage. You can also look at great discussions from members from this talk and past talks on the MeetUp website. So take advantage of those free resources. Just like Travis said, you can start training yourself. Why not? Next slide. And thank you to our sponsors again, United Health Group, and to the WECO staff team who put out a lot of effort to make these happen. We've been so excited to have this great panel and all of these people attending from Minnesota on a day when it is 72 degrees outside. Thank you so much for being with us, and we hope that you will join us again June 7th for part 2. Thanks, everyone.